What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Too Good for Theaters video. Today, we're going to be breaking down the Patriots' first win of the season by a final score of 33-27 over the Miami Dolphins. So let's get right into this game breakdown. Man, just what a crazy game there. And there were so many high and low points of this game. So for the most part, I'm just probably going to be going over some positives and some negatives on both sides of the ball here, particularly with some players, but I'll try and give the best overall recap that I can. But starting off on the offensive side of the ball here, this really was the peak performance of this offense. And what I mean by that, it wasn't necessarily the big plays, but it was just taking profit after profit. And there was times where the defense did bail them out on the day. But in the first half in particular, Drake Maye had this offense humming. It was just a lot of well-timed play calling decisions by Josh McDaniels between the good balanced running game and the passing game. I believe the first 14 plays for the Patriots were 7-7 both in terms of pass and rushing attempts. But just a really nice job by Josh McDaniels of calling this game, and a great job by the offensive players of executing, and they really were taking advantage of what is a very poor Miami defense. And Drake Maye on the day, this is what a lot of us Patriots fans were wondering if he's going to be able to do. Whether he's going to be able to kind of tinker that big playability and be that more so game management quarterback and still have those dynamic plays, but do not put the team's offense in harm's way. And what I mean by that is turning the ball over. We saw last week that interception, how drastically that game changed. And he did such a good job this week of just taking what was there for him. And he still showed off the throws that made him a top 3 pick, and why we really do believe he is the future of this Patriots team at the quarterback position. And another underrated aspect of this game that I think that Drake Maye really stood out to me in was his pocket awareness, and whether it was stepping up to make throws, stepping up to scramble, as well as honestly on the bootleg plays, just being able to extend the plays and knowing, hey, this is how my offensive line is blocking this play. I know I got this amount of time to either extend the play or just take what's given to me. And he did a really nice job of keeping his eyes down the field, and if nothing was there, then taking off and scrambling. And I felt that his stats on the day were very reflective of how well he played. He finished 19 of 23 on the day, only missed 4 pass attempts, like I said earlier. And I think one of those were actually a little bit of a miscommunication between him and Stephon Diggs, was really his only inaccurate pass on the day. Finished with 230 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, as well as he had 10 rushing attempts for 31 yards and a rushing touchdown. Of course, that rushing touchdown was huge after a Miami score. Patriots drive the ball down the field, and like I said before, pocket awareness. This might have been a little designed as well, but just a real nice job of scrambling out of the pocket, sensing there was a free rusher who was actually former Patriot Matthew Judon. Was like, hey, I know I could beat this guy to the pylon, and just did a real nice job of getting the ball in the end zone there. But in particularly more on Drake Maye, just a great job in general by the Patriots offense of responding when they needed to, that being after Miami scoring drives. And I believe the Patriots actually scored on 3 out of the 5 drives right after Miami did score on the day. So that's a huge encouraging sign that Drake Maye and this Patriots offense is taking a leap forward in terms of just being able to stabilize themselves and not letting themselves play unproductive football. And what I mean by that more so is kind of playing complementary football with the defense. At times, the defense is going to give up some ground. Can this offense manage to get themselves back into the game? And the Patriots offense took some huge steps in terms of relishing those moments and just being able to respond with a little bit of adversity thrown their way. So that is a huge encouraging leap for Drake Maye and this Patriots offense. But moving over to the offensive line, I thought that the offensive line played a very productive game in today's game, excluding the penalties. And Morgan Moses, I'm not sure what the hell was happening on that right side, but 3 false start penalties from a veteran lineman is simply just unacceptable. But some good news, however, after 1 false start, I thought that Will Campbell played very well in today's game. Didn't hear his name much, which is always an encouraging sign for an offensive lineman. So that is a positive and a negative to take away from the offensive line today. Both the tackles had a little bit of different days. However, our young tackle had a very nice day, and he was going up against some pretty solid edge rushers, that being Bradley Chubb as well as Chop Robinson. So that's an encouraging sign there. But the interior of the offensive line in particular, in the run game, I thought had a very good day. And whether it was through power plays where they were pulling of the guards, I saw a lot of movement with Mike Onwenu in particular, where he was getting a ton of push in the middle which really allowed the backs to get downhill, and that's why you saw Ramondre Stevenson had the game that he did, as well as Antonio Gibson and Travion Henderson both had some big-time holes hit, and that was just such a key factor for this Patriots offense, being able to run in the middle of this offensive line, which I'm a little concerned about because Garrett Bradbury is a quote-unquote undersized center, but if they're getting the push that they got today, I'm not sure whether it's attributed to Miami's soft front or maybe they just had a bad run blocking day against the Raiders, but if they can expect this type of push every game on a week-to-week basis, it's going to open up a whole lot of avenues for this offense, and in particular, the play-action game is going to be extremely difficult to stop because we saw how often Josh McDaniels went to that bootleg play action early on in this game, and the Patriots had a ton of success with that, especially in their 12 personnel, where they were able to get guys like Hunter Henry as well as Austin Hooper involved early. And if they're able to kind of shorten these games and control the ball as much as they did in the first half, like I said before, that's the peak of this offense. And when the backs are running like they did today, with the movement that line was getting, I mean, you can't ask for much more from this Patriots offense. And I know it wasn't necessarily the same in the second half. However, when they needed drives, they got those drives. Like I said before, when they responded to the Miami touchdown drive, they went right down the field, scored another touchdown. Drake Maye scrambled that ball in, and then they hit on the 2-point conversion. And you know that they were feeling themselves with the 2-point conversion because it was simply just a power play right up the middle to Ramondre Stevenson. And you saw the interior linemen have themselves a day. I mean, Jared Wilson was getting hyped after that. They realized the push that they were getting against this line. And if you eliminate a poor snap by Garrett Bradbury, which, side note, you're a 5-year starter, Garrett Bradbury, snap the fucking ball, please. I mean, that was a terrible fucking snap, and it absolutely halted this offense when they needed to have a long drive, especially after the defense got a stop like that. But besides me, that's not good complimentary football. Back to the point, though. They played very well on the interior of the offensive line in today's game. So hopefully that is something that can continue to move forward. And like I said before, no one on the outside really had themselves a huge day. They were really kind of dispersing the targets around. But it was good to see the tight ends get involved. And I was in particularly extremely impressed with the backs out of the backfield, especially Ramondre Stevenson. Of course, we know Ramondre Stevenson, not necessarily a receiving back, but if you've been a fan of the Patriots, you know that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. In that wheel route, that absolutely sparked this offense. Just a great catch. It was a solid throw. Might have been a little too far out in front of him, but Ramondre Stevenson with the soft hands, that is a great catch by a running back. And those wheel routes seem to be a favorite of this Patriots offense. Of course, James White and Shane Vereen used to run a ton of those, but if you can replicate that with Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, as well as Travion Henderson, who in particular I feel is probably in the most comfort zone in his receiving abilities out of the backfield, that's certainly an avenue of this Patriots offense that can be exploited because you have such talented backs out of the backfield, and getting them involved in the receiving game is only going to add another dimension to this Patriots offense. And like I said before, the thing is with Josh McDaniels' offense is sometimes he gets ripped for kind of being a conservative play caller, but the ability with his play calling, what it allows people to do is open up so many different dimensions where you're not necessarily sure you're going to get hit from with the Patriots offense, whether it's the backfield, the tight ends, or the receivers. And when you don't necessarily have the strongest receiving core like the Patriots do, you're going to have to get your backs and your tight ends involved to have a lot of production on the offensive side. But it's just more and more as Drake Maye gets more comfortable in this offense, it's only going to open up more and more avenues, and I expect Josh McDaniels to kind of be very similar to how he was on the day in terms of his play calling. I felt like, in particular on the day, he did a real nice job of calling the screen passes against pressure. And what I meant by that is whenever Miami was blitzing, I feel like Drake Maye had a quick check to maybe a back screen or just being able to get the ball out quickly or attacking the weak spots in the defense when they sent their pressure. And the Patriots offense was able to make some big plays on third down on the day. I'm not necessarily sure of the percentages, but I believe they actually picked up probably around half of their third down conversions. Most of that came in the first half, but it was very solid and efficient production on third down on the day, which meant a lot for this Patriots offense because when they're on the field and kind of controlling the ball, time of possession, that's that much more energy that you can conserve for your defense, which is only going to help you win more games. But overall, I think the offense, get rid of the penalties, and this offense really did click today, and hopefully this is a building block game. If you eliminate some of those penalties, this is the type of offense that you really want to strive for, and I felt that your young quarterback on the day took a huge, tremendous step. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, also another up and down kind of day for them, but I will give them a ton of credit. When they needed to, they got stops. And in particular, in the first half, of course, they forced that 3-and-out right after the Patriots drove down the field for the opening drive score. Getting that 3-and-out and taking that 12-0 lead was massive in this game because Miami came out storming after their first drive. And when that team gets rolling with all the motion and the speed that they have, they are an incredibly difficult offense to stop. You have to give them credit for that. And when they're playing in time and in rhythm, there really is no stopping them. So the only way you can really stop it is to get some pressure. And the Patriots weren't doing that in the first half whatsoever. Granted, Miami only had 3 possessions in the first half because of how well the Patriots controlled the ball on offense. But giving up 14 points in 3 possessions, that is not ideal for this Patriots defense. But the second half, they did a really nice job of kind of tuning up their pressure. And the good news for them, it wasn't necessarily through their blitzes. It was more so kind of just getting pressure with 4. And in particular, the 4-man unit, probably their best 4-man pass rush unit, is Kayvon Chaisson, Harold Landry on the edges. Then you have Christian Barmore and Milton Williams on the inside. In that unit in the second half, I felt did a really nice job of getting pressure on Tua. And as the game wore on and on, we saw them getting a ton more pressure, and they were able to close out that game with getting a couple of big-time sacks. Harold Landry had that big one right before the Patriots offense actually drove and kind of mismanaged their final possession, quote-unquote. And then, of course, Milton Williams adding that final sack to really end this game. But just a really nice job by the front 4 in particular there to get pressure. And they did a really nice job defending the run compared to the first half as well. And I felt that a couple players really stepped up. Of course, Milton Williams. Christian Barmore had some really nice run stuffs in there. And the linebackers started playing more downhill. I saw Robert Spillane and Christian Ellis get into the backfield a lot more often. But moving Anthony Jennings to the edge there as well, he did a really nice job containing the edge, and the Patriots defense played much more disciplined in the second half compared to the first half. Even guys like Carlton Davis on their corner positions were not allowing guys to get to the outside and turn upfield, keeping Achane and moving him to the sideline and stuff like that. So a really nice job by the Patriots setting the edge and not allowing Miami to run the ball to the outside, which really forced them to run in between the tackles. And the Patriots simply just have better personnel there compared to Miami. And I understand that you might say, oh, well, Miami had 2 starters out on their offensive line, but it was just a good job of the defensive line containing Miami and forcing them to really beat them through the air, which at times, of course, Miami did. They're a talented offense and stuff like that, and they really did attack the middle of the field. The broadcast in particular noticed that, but when the Patriots were able to kind of clog up the middle and get pressure, that's when they did not allow Miami anything, and they did a real nice job of kind of forcing Miami into beating them only one way, which of course is still difficult to stop, but when you're able to contain that just a little bit, like this Patriots defense did towards the end of that game, we saw some turnovers from Tua, and we saw them get to the quarterback, especially against a depleted offensive line. So it was only a matter of time, really, before the Patriots were able to kind of figure out that issue, contain the middle of the field, and force Tua into some bad mistakes, as well as him just simply missing some throws. Of course, he missed that big throw to Tyreek Hill and stuff like that. But just a good job by the Patriots to really stick with their game plan and force Miami into some difficult situations where they were able to get some pressure finally and kind of halt these Miami drives, especially as we saw towards the end of that game. But moving on to some people in particular, I thought that Alex Austin had a really tough game, and this was a game where you missed Gonzo. Of course, having Carlton Davis and Gonzo compared to Carlton Davis and Alex Austin, you're going to choose Gonzo every time. But this game right here kind of shows why Alex Austin is good depth, because you don't necessarily want him as a starter going up against talented wide receivers with elite speed like Jalen Waddle as well as Tyreek Hill. And we saw that at times where Alex Austin really did struggle to match up with that speed. Of course, he got beat one-on-one against Jalen Waddle in the first half for that kind of corner touchdown. I felt that he kind of played a little bit too far inside when there was safety help over the top, and he got beat to the corner route to the outside, so he has to have some better awareness there in terms of recognizing where he has the help at. And the deep ball that he got beat by Tyreek Hill, it's one thing where you get beat deep, and luckily the ball was actually underthrown by Tua, but you had to just do a nice job of getting your head turned around, knowing that you do have a safety there as well to help you read and get that ball. But you can't lose that jump ball battle to Tyreek Hill, especially with him just doing a better job of recognizing where the ball is. At the very least, you have to knock that ball away, if not intercept it, and you have to get your head turned around. Because even if you don't give up the big play, sometimes you might get called for that pass interference if you make contact with the wide receiver. However, besides those two plays, I felt that Alex Austin held his own. I think that this Miami matchup in particular is just a tough matchup for him to really match up with the speed. And outside of that, I felt that Robert Spillane had a very mixed game. I felt like in the first half, he was kind of missing some tackles. And on the day, the Patriots defense missed a lot of tackles. But he just shows how valuable he is in terms of coverage and how often he's around the ball. He can really play sideline to sideline, vertical if he needs to, rush the passer. And he's just such a versatile linebacker that you really can have him in on any scenario. And I think that really shows with just how often he is around the ball, like I said. But he wears the green dot. He's a defensive captain. And he really is just such a big part of this Patriots defense. And a ton of credit should go his way, even though I'm sure that he did leave some plays on the table there. But continuing to just go on the list, Jalen Hawkins had himself another productive week, I'd say. Of course, he had that interception taken away from him because of the Elijah Ponder neutral zone infraction early on in this game. And more on Elijah Ponder, I don't think we saw him in the game after that snap, but as an undrafted free agent, that is just something you can't do. And that's the type of play that's going to get you cut, or at the very least, it's going to reduce your playing time like we saw in this game and probably get you sent back down to the practice squad. So that is something that you just simply have to be aware of. Of course, there was a couple neutral zone infractions on the Patriots today. I think that Caleb Vaughn actually had himself one early on as well. However, I do believe that he did make up for it with his sack. Of course, like I said before, Milton Williams having multiple sacks. That's why he gets paid the big bucks. And of course, Harold Landry actually recorded himself another sack. And I believe he actually has 3.5 or even 4.5 sacks through these first 2 weeks here. But just a really nice job by Harold Landry getting to the quarterback and generating some pressure. And like we saw today, there was really good coverage on the back end at times, which allowed some of these guys in particular to get some of the sacks. I believe that the Harold Landry sack was a little bit of a coverage sack. I believe Milton Williams actually got credited with a sack when Tua ran out of bounds because of a coverage sack. So just a real nice job by the secondary, like I said, as well. Just want to throw a quick shout out there. And speaking of secondary, Marte Mapu coming up with a big-time interception there. Did a real nice job of reading to his eyes. And hopefully this continues to be a trend where this Patriots team is able to get some takeaways. Because if we remember from last year, the Patriots were unable to turn over teams whatsoever. And through the first 2 weeks, the Patriots have come away with interceptions. So hopefully this is something that's going to be able to be a characteristic of this defense. And when Gonzo comes back, I expect their man coverage to be sticky tight. So this is a very encouraging sign for this Patriots defense. And hopefully some more takeaways are going to be on the horizon. Lastly, I wanted to wrap this recap up with special teams coverage here. In particular, because of how much special teams actually impacted this game. And whether it was positive or negative for the Patriots, I feel like they have a ton to improve with. There was multiple special teams penalties. I believe Jalen Hawkins had one, Craig Woodson had one. But it's just a very good sight to see with teams kicking away from Travion Henderson during this regular season thus far, that Antonio Gibson has the ability to really make some plays as well. And having two kickoff returners who can bring it to the house at any time, like Antonio Gibson proved today, and Travion Henderson obviously proved in the preseason, is such a additional benefactor for this Patriots special teams. But on the other side, the Patriots special team coverage I've been very impressed with up to this point. But just that one punt where they quote-unquote said that Bryce Behringer kind of outpunted their coverage, and of course that is a thing, but you cannot have missed tackles. And it came from guys like Brendan Schooler. That's just something you don't expect for him. That's a little bit of a fluky situation there, but the special teams coverage has to tighten up a little bit. But it did a real nice job of getting back and getting their get back, really responding immediately with a kickoff return touchdown after having that punt return touchdown for you. And just the kicking game in general, Andy Borregales has to get his shit together. I mean, from an observer's eye, it looks like Julian Ashby's putting the snap in a proper location and Bryce Behringer's getting the snap down. I think that Andy Borregales is simply just in his own head. And I was excusing last week's miss because of the new conditions and stuff like that. But guess what? He played at Miami and he kicked in the same exact stadium that he did today. You cannot have him missing extra points like he did today, because that ultimately could have ended up costing the Patriots if Miami came back and won this game. However, he did redeem himself a little bit by making that big-time 53-yard field goal. That was a clutch kick. I will give him that. However, then, of course, he has the kicking infraction penalty right after that. So that's something you have to look at for rookie kickers, man. I really just don't trust them whatsoever. And so far, Andy Borregales has done nothing to give me any bit of confidence in him whatsoever. And if he keeps this up, the Patriots might have to look for external factors in the kicking game. That's going to do it for this game recap, everyone. Huge win for the Patriots, getting their first of the season. But this is a culture-defining win for the Patriots. Of course, they had to respond to a lot of adversity in this game, and they come out on the favorable side of that. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and hopefully I'll catch you all in some future Patriot breakdowns.